Thanks to Bhutan, happiness has been set as a goal for the world at large through the United Nations resolution. And now we have to think as what law can bring to this happiness movement and the policy for happiness. Law is concerned by everything. Even before you are born, law is there. Even after you are dead, law is there. And whether it is for humans, animals, vegetables, or social body, law is 360 degrees like happiness. That's probably why we forgot about law when we built up the GNH policy. The mainstream on GNH policy was left to economists, and there was a good reason for that. We left to the economists the role of the elephant in the four friends. And why we left the role of elephant, it's because when you look at the world, it is outrageous. Outrageous to see how the pyramid is and how many people are still starving. So we looked at economists and said, please put the pyramid down and have only little people in such a terrible situation. Now when we see the world, we see that we should all be together with economists, because obviously they should not be left alone. They cannot do the whole work together. And we lawyers have a duty to come and do our humble work to help out to see how to bring something for getting GNH as a real policy and not only a philosophy. So this is why in France an advocate school has decided one day to create the Observatoire International du Bonheur, which is meant to get together the civil society and the lawyers, whether lawyers, advocates, professors, judges, all together with the civil society to see how we can also be a change in the world. And you are all welcome because it's a non-profit association. And you can all become also part of the Observatoire International du Bonheur. So, what does law bring? Law brings, for most of you, remedial. But law is not only a tool. Lawyers are not only technicians. Gandhiji was not a technician. Nelson Mandela was not a technician. Law is anticipatory. Law is structuring, and law provides remedy. Most of the time, we see only the remedial part. If a society has got the remedial part as the main part, it means there is a failure in the anticipation and there is a failure in the structure. For the remedy part, we have two approaches basically. The Bhutanese approach, for example, which is based on compromise. Because there are two approaches that you cannot really put together. Either you are right or you are in peace. Sometimes when you are in a conflict, you may be right, but if you want to be recognized as someone who is on the right side, you may not get the peace. So the right-based approach is more the Western-based legal approach, and the compromise approach is called alternative in the West, but it is not alternative, it is a principal way of resolution of disputes, for example, in Bhutan. So what do we want? Happiness will be more being used by compromise than by right-based, mainly individual rights rather than community rights. So there is a duty, I would say, for those of you who are present here. It's very important you are here because you are going to create the future law college of Bhutan, opening in 2017. Please do not do copy and paste of the West, because Western law is, and do not put just a little bit of Bhutanese to be ethnic or to have some DNA to say that it is Bhutanese, because that's so important. Law in Western was based mainly on Roman law. Roman law is prior to Christianism. So there is no sense of compassion or altruism in Western law. So if you want to have a law linked with happiness, we should keep that in mind. And maybe it's not for nothing that Observatoire International du Bonheur was created in France because we have the philosopher Rousseau who put forward the contrat social, the social contract, and say that law should be used to bring the peace to the people. So this is the remedial part. The structuring part of law is to say that we should have rights, and the rights are fundamental. And just to give you an example how Supreme Court of India, for example, took the fundamental right written in the Constitution, saying that no one can be deprived of his life without a procedure. From that, they deduced that there is a right to life. But then they say, a right to life without meaning. What does that mean? So there is a fundamental constitutional right to a meaningful life. And recently there's been a case where it has been put forward that birds have a right to life. So why should birds not have a right to a meaningful life? So Supreme Court of India has decided that the meaningful life for a bird is to fly in the sky, not to be in a cage. So someone who is having birds in a cage to be sold has been condemned as having some anti-constitutional activity. That's an example of how law and GNH can be put together. Another thing is, as you say, there is a balance. Law is, always made of two balance. If it is unbalanced, there is no happiness. And the more we go, the more we have the indicators of happiness. That gives a sort of meaning that there is a sort of right to happiness. We in the observatory, we believe there should be no definition of happiness. That should be left to each individual because that would be dangerous. We could have any dictatorial attitude saying this is happiness and there is a right to happiness. So right to happiness for us seems dangerous. But right to the pursuit of happiness according to whatever you believe is happiness, that we believe in. And that we believe should become a fundamental right. Not only in the preamble of the Constitution of Bhutan, but maybe at an international level. But whenever you talk about rights, if you're a lawyer, you say there is no right without duty. So, okay, it's good to say, is my GNH good? Is my country's GNH good? Is my town happy? Is my institution happy? But what are you giving? What is your happiness footprint? Why don't we measure also, we want to measure the happiness footprint. What is the happiness footprint of the country? And I would say Bhutan has a marvelous positive happiness footprint, for example. And we could put that forward to say that this is one of the greatest contributions as well to Bhutan, and measure the footprint so rights and duties should be always balanced. So we suggest to set up some sort of institution of commission at an international level to make an auditing of the legal systems, to say where they are not compatible with GNH. What could we suggest? Could we come up with a model, a legislative model that could be adopted and adapted by countries, for example, who would not have the money, for example, to put up such tasks, and see how can we share this with this model, and keeping in mind that law to be efficient should be accepted by people. You don't have to come from above and say this is the law. It should be really understood, so for each social group, we should find the highest common denominator possibly acceptable for the group. So there is no rule that should be just unique and universal for all. So that is the structuring part. And then anticipation. Never forget anticipation. What is coming forward? We've been talking about all the evils already existing. But for coming to us, if we just open our eyes, we see all the new technologies coming. With nanotechnology, biotechnology, you have artificial intelligence, you have robotics. You have the GAFA, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, who are going to take the lead of the world. They already have bought almost all the most important companies of artificial intelligence in the world. That is existing. They are non-elected, it's not democratic, and they have a vision that is transhumanism. Do we agree with transhumanism? 1 minute, thank you. I'm coming to transhumanism. So do we agree with transhumanism? Is that the world we want? Is that compatible with change? We should anticipate this unprecedented revolution which is coming forward. We have to put in front of it no social reference, no political reference, no economical reference, no philosophical reference, no legal reference. So we have to get together and think about anticipation of what is coming to us. So this is what I wanted to tell you about law. And law is not something boring, it is something fantastic, and that can change the world as all mosquitoes can get together and do something and try to have a good happiness footprint. I thank you very much for the softness of your silence.